should find your water coming back, and elevator service will come back with that. Because of the discharges from our wastewater plants, particularly the 13th Street station, which takes all of the sewage from the west side of Manhattan and pumps it over to Newtown Creek where it's processed. The overflow into the Hudson River really has left our beaches in a condition for the next couple of days where it would be dangerous to swim in the water. We've put up red flags, we've put up tape, we've had police and the lifeguards there to warn people to stay away from the water. Unfortunately, some people still go in. You can get very seriously ill or worse from going into contaminated water, so please, I know it's a nice weekend, I know it'd be great to be in the water, but a swim is not worth the pain if you suffer from disease. Sanitation crews out on the streets doing a great job. Streetlights coming back will help them. By tomorrow they should be all caught up. Regular collections as well as trash cans on the streets. They've canceled the days off, and the crews will continue to work until our streets are safe. There has been no spike in criminal activity. In fact, arrests and reported crimes are under what you would typically expect for a summer day. Tonight, as evening falls, the police are going to deploy in those areas that remain without power, if they still exist. And in any case, the NYPD has officers on extended shifts, and they're just going to focus on high problem neighborhoods and problem people, the way Operation Impact has had them do so successfully all along. I did the other day talk about, when asked, was there any agencies that weren't part of coping with the blackout, and I jokingly said that I didn't think the Office of Film, Theater, and Broadcasting had a lot to do in helping us during the blackout. Turns out that I was wrong. The Commissioner of Film, Theater, and Broadcast, Kathy Oliver, did point out to me that they had a desk out on the street in front of their closed office building this morning issuing permits. And there's a film, Laws of Attraction, with Julian Moore and Pierce Bronson that's being filmed, was filmed today. There are 6 other films being made in this city this weekend. They got their permits. That's a lot of jobs in the city and does a lot. So even that department more than does its share. Let me finish before we take some questions by just repeating what I've tried to say before. I think all New Yorkers have really done their part. The President of the United States called me the other day, yesterday, and then called me again this afternoon to say that he'd been following what we were doing and wanted to congratulate all New Yorkers on how well they have exercised common sense and courtesy and worked together. I think if you compare what happened this time to what happened back in 1977 when there was chaos and crime, today we've seen calm and compassion. It tells you something about New Yorkers. It's a great tribute to this city. It shows that New Yorkers are determined to make their city better and not succumb to adversity. It is really the reason why New York, it's more than just a saying, New York really is the world's second home. And all of us have a lot to be proud about. And after a couple of days, we'll get over the pain of the annoyance, and we'll look back and with great pride that we once again carried through. We'll be happy to take a question or two, sir.
Mr. Mayor, yesterday you said it was too early to judge some of the economic impact. Any idea a day later where
Well, we talked about that before. We still don't have a good idea. There is clearly overtime for police, fire, sanitation, the big uniform services. There's overtime throughout the city. There is some diminution of economic activity, although Stock Exchange today was open normal hours, and when I went over to ring the opening bell, there were more people on the floor of the Stock Exchange than there are on a normal Friday morning in the summer. I didn't look at the volume at the end of the day, but the market finished slightly up, and that's good. There are a variety of things that will, before when we sort it all out, have cost the city money. Even in the macro sense, it will not have been calamitous at all. Sir?
This time last night, you said that you were hopeful the lights would be on across the city for the most part by, into the late evening.
Yes.
How confident are you that the lights are going to be on in all these neighborhoods you mentioned? They're relatively few, but the few where people don't have electricity by tonight.
Because the reason that it took longer than what Con Ed had estimated was that the outside agencies and other utilities and transmission systems that they had to deal with had their own problems, and so syncing with them and getting help from them took a lot longer than Con Ed had thought. Con Ed itself had no damage when they shut down and were able to start things up whenever they wanted to. Things came right back up on schedule. The Pennsylvania-New Jersey power grid is now back and feeding power in. That's how we got back the southern end of Staten Island. That's helpful. Upstate New York has been helpful. Some of their plants have come back on, and Con Ed has been bringing up their own generation capacity. So what you're seeing now is being filled in with generation plants that are in the city owned by Con Ed or Keyspan or one of the other small generation companies. Sir?
You've been listening to the Mayor Bloomberg's press conference. He was being a little defensive about how long it's going to take and why this is not a precise science, how long it's going to take. He did say 85% of New York is up, and the subway will take 8 to 9 hours, not 6 to 8, 8 to 9 hours to get fully operational after the power is
Right,
restored.
and those areas that don't have power will have additional police in the neighborhoods tonight. We're going to turn now to Bill Evans, who's got a quick check on World News Tonight, the worst power outage in American history. Exclusive information about where it started and what went wrong. The impact, 50 million lives disrupted. Manufacturing grinds to a halt. Commercial air travel in chaos. Is the United States a superpower with a third world power system? We'll take a closer look at how to fix the grid. And miracles in the night, rescued from underground. Terrifying darkness, suffocating heat. Then came the firemen.
From ABC News World Headquarters in New York, this is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Reporting tonight, Claire Shipman.
Good evening. For millions of people in the U.S. and Canada, this has been a frustrating and humbling 24 hours, and it is not over. The worst power outage in American history is still having an enormous impact from New York, where ice is being hawked in the streets, to Michigan, where only a handful of gas stations in the entire state are open for business. While electricity has been restored to many of the 50 million people who lost it yesterday, there are still rolling blackouts across the region, and thousands of people in the Midwest especially may not have power until Monday. And so dramatic was the sudden fall of darkness, it was visible from space. This is what a large part of the affected area looked like before the outage, and then after. Today, President Bush said the push continues to figure out what happened.
So it's a good opportunity for us to analyze what went wrong and deal with it. We don't know yet what went wrong, but we will.
And indeed, more than 24 hours after the outage, there are no satisfying answers. Congress is calling for an investigation. Our chief investigative correspondent, Brian Rosh, joins us with some exclusive information tonight about what happened. Brian?
Clear, the FBI has not ruled out anything yet, including sabotage. But the focus now is on what went wrong with one particular transmission line outside Cleveland yesterday at 3:06 p.m. 1 hour later, the blackout began. It first hit Lansing, Michigan at 4:09 and 2 seconds at 2 General Motors plants there. That was the first indication of major trouble, a power crash, a sustained deep undervoltage, according to the FBI and a private industry log of power grid incidents obtained by ABC News.
Once that disturbance occurred, shortly after that, about 4 seconds after that, we saw another disturbance of similar magnitude in a nearby location, and then we started seeing ripple effect.
4 seconds later, at 4:09 and 6 seconds, the power crash skipped to suburban Cleveland, running along the interconnected Ohio-Michigan power grid. A second major outage was registered at another GM plant in Parma, Ohio, the pivotal point in the blackout, according to FBI investigators. The Ohio Power Company failed to separate from the national grid, as it was supposed to, sending the cascade of problems on to New York. Michael Gant is running the investigation for the power industry.
The system is designed to isolate itself, to protect that area, to have that area go down and have the rest of the system survive. And instead, it spread further and longer than it should have.
A spokesman for the Ohio company, the First Energy Company, said it had followed all proper procedures, but would not comment specifically on whether it had triggered the huge blackout by failing to separate from the grid.
If they had separated, you might have seen a region in the Ohio area that would have been without power, but you would not have seen it on almost a national scale as we did.
And it turns out the only reason it did not go fully national was that a power grid control center in Valley Forge, Pennsylvania, where the computers and technicians were able to just stop what they called a runaway freight train. Had they not, the blackouts likely would have spread as far south as Florida and well into the Rocky Mountain states, Claire.
Oh, amazing. And has foul play been ruled out, Brian?
Well, the FBI tells us at this point they've ruled out the notion of cyber terror, but they have not ruled out other possible criminal acts.
All right, Brian Russ on the search for answers. Thank you. Now to our correspondents across the affected region. We have reporters in the cities that have been hit hardest: Cleveland, Detroit, and of course here in New York. New York's mayor had predicted early yesterday evening that the power would be back on in a few hours. It hasn't been that easy. It took more than a day for the authorities here to announce that 85% of the power has been restored. Here's ABC's Bob Woodruff.
This morning, the stranded were still sleeping outside. Tourists and commuters from the suburbs who never dreamed they'd spend a night in a city park.
It was acceptable, I guess. I got about a half an hour's sleep, which wasn't bad under the circumstances.
But it is still bad for New Yorkers without power. There are long lines for gas, and many food stores remain closed.
There's nothing, no air conditioning, all your food's gone bad.
Grand Central Station was without power for most of the day, the clock frozen on the time of the blackout. And with the electronic schedule board down,
express to White Plains and local from there to Brewster North.
People found their trains the old-fashioned way.
Long Branch, track 8, track 9.
The subways, which are the primary means of travel in New York, are still closed, and they're not likely to reopen until tomorrow. So in desperation, New Yorkers walked across the bridges today for home.
The ATMs were all closed down. I couldn't get any cash. It made it hard to be able to buy food and water.
It was a chaotic night. Thousands were evacuated from the subways. 911 dispatchers received 80,000 calls, twice the normal number. 800 people were rescued from stuck elevators. Firefighters responded to 60 serious fires, mostly started by candles. But the big story was what didn't happen. Only minor looting and about 24 arrests, and just one blackout-related death. Today, New York's governor urged people to skip work and hit the beach.
I've issued an executive order making the state parks and beaches free for anyone today. It's a beautiful day on Long Island.
Many New Yorkers took him up on that. Bob Woodruff, ABC News, New York.
For most people, electricity is like oxygen. You don't think much about it unless there's not enough. In the Detroit area, more than 24 hours into the blackout, nearly 2 million homes and offices still don't have power. ABC's Ron Claiborne is there.
For most of today, the Motor City was closed. The streets almost deserted. Businesses, stores, restaurants, all shut down. The big three automakers also shut down. They are not expected to manufacture any cars again until next week. Late this afternoon, parts of the city began getting electricity back for the first time in 24 hours. But most of Detroit is not expected to have power back online until at least Sunday. This gas station in Riverview was one of the few in the entire state where you could buy gasoline if you were willing to wait more than 2 hours.
I got a home, I got 4 boys, I got a generator running that needs gas. That's why I'm here. If I didn't need it, you think I'd be waiting in this line? Hell no.
This supermarket managed to open with a diesel-fired truck generator. Hundreds of people showed up to stock up on supplies.
Water, D batteries, ice, and generators.
Do you have plenty of all of that?
No.
Overnight, the police were out in force. The streets of Detroit calm. Today, some people fled to the riverfront to escape the oppressive heat and humidity. But many here are worried about what a weekend in Detroit without power could bring. Ron Claiborne, ABC News, Detroit.
In many areas affected by the blackout, no electricity means another serious problem. In Cleveland, the city's entire water system was completely knocked out. ABC's Barbara Pinto tonight on getting by without one of life's absolute essentials.
Nothing, not even a trickle.
In the Cleveland suburb of Royalton this afternoon, they were still without water.
1 day without a shower you can do. 2 days without a shower when you're dealing with people, you cannot do.
At the height of the blackout, more than 1 million people in the city and surrounding areas lost more than just power. All of Cleveland's water supply runs on electric pumps.
You can get along in the dark, you can get along in the heat, but water becomes a health and safety issue very quickly.
The National Guard hauled in tankers of drinking water. The fire department brought in thousands of gallons more. There is plenty of water here at city beaches along Lake Erie, but in this hot and humid weather, none of it is doing overheated city residents any good. The power outage also knocked sewage treatment plants offline, contaminating the lake.
We wanted to wade in it, but I'm not sure we should do that either, probably.
Late today, most of the water began flowing, but it may be unsafe, so the mayor ordered residents to boil it at least until Sunday.
We're boiling our water, so we're heating our house with our stove, but we're not supposed to use our air.
The power and water may be on, but the inconvenience is far from over. Barbara Pinto, ABC News, Cleveland.
The U.S. shared the power outage with Canada, where millions were left in the dark. Toronto and Ottawa have been about 75% of their electricity back, though Ontario remains in a state of emergency. Government offices are closed, and all non-essential workers have been told to stay home. Oil companies are also asking people not to stock up on gas, to leave it instead for emergency generators. The power failure's effects rippled across the country and up into the skies, delaying and canceling flights around the world. There were more than 750 delays and cancellations yesterday, and already more than 500 cancellations today. It's been a nationwide disruption. Here's ABC's Jeff Morrell.
The day after was even worse for air travelers. Long lines, longer delays, and short tempers.
I'm hot, I'm frustrated, I'm very, very disappointed.
At most airports hit by the blackout, power has been spotty at best.
So we have problems with fuel, we have problems with baggage, we have problems with security, we have problems with moving jetways, all of which depend on electricity.
The 3 New York area airports, which handle 1,600 flights a day, have been hardest hit. Today, Delta has not been able to get a single flight out of LaGuardia or JFK. U.S. Airways, only 3. And American Airlines has canceled 280 flights. The ripple effect has canceled flights here in Washington and at airports all the way to the West Coast. Airlines say this is worse than the worst snowstorm. Limited train travel has resumed between Washington and New York, but there is still no service north out of New York City.
We've in fact encouraged people not to travel to New York unless they absolutely had to.
The outage will cost financially strapped airlines tens of millions of dollars, and they say it may take another 5 days to get operations back to normal. Jeff Morrell, ABC News, Washington.
And when we come back, the economic chain reaction when the plug is pulled. And we'll take a closer look at the country's tangled electric network, finding out how it failed. Our coverage of the blackout of 2003 continues.
This is World News Tonight with Peter Jennings. Brought to you by Plavix.
Millions of us are hospitalized with heart-related chest pain or a certain type of heart attack, what doctors call ACS. The cause? For most, it was blood platelets that formed clots, which blocked blood from getting to the heart. Think aspirin and your other heart medications alone are enough? One more thing could help make a difference. Ask your doctor about adding Plavix. Added to aspirin in your current treatment, Plavix goes beyond what you're taking to help raise protection against heart attack or stroke. Plavix and your other medications work in different ways. Plavix, taken with aspirin, plays its own role in keeping blood platelets from sticking together and forming clots, which helps keep blood flowing.
If you have a medical condition that causes bleeding, such as stomach ulcer, you shouldn't use Plavix. The risk of bleeding may increase with Plavix, and when you take Plavix with certain other medicines, including aspirin. Review your medicines with your doctor to minimize this risk. Additional rare but serious side effects could occur.
Add Plavix for more protection against heart attack or stroke.
Emerging science suggests that lycopene is one of the ingredients in tomatoes that may help reduce the risk of heart disease. Now Centrum and Centrum Silver have lycopene, another reason to take your Centrum. New Centrum with lycopene, now more complete from A to Zinc.
The 3-in-1 pillar candle from Glade. 3 spellbinding fragrances, each designed to blend beautifully from one scent to the next. Glade 3-in-1 candles, because 3 scents are better than 1.
How do you invest to help secure your children's future? You start with your dreams, and Edward Jones.
My life, my world, it all begins with a dream.
Edward Jones.
Just because a toothbrush is electric doesn't mean it works like a Sonicare. It has patented Sonic technology. Whiter, healthier teeth in 28 days, guaranteed. Ask your dental professional about Sonicare.
Lights were the most visible casualty of the power outage, but they weren't the most significant. When the blackout shut down entire cities, we were reminded how much our daily routine depends on constant power and what the cost is when it fails. Here's ABC's Betsy Stark.
The blackout of '03 didn't stop the New York Stock Exchange from opening. New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg presiding. But it continues to keep the doors shuttered on about 50 Sears department stores, 50 Walmarts, nearly a dozen Macy's, and much of the nation's auto industry.
Today is Friday, August 15th, and the GM offices in Southeast Michigan are closed due to the widespread power outage.
U.S. manufacturers consume roughly 40% of the nation's electricity. From Cleveland to New York, grocery stores tried desperately last night to salvage what they could.
We don't want to lose the merchandise. We might want to sell at a cheaper price instead of losing the merchandise.
But today, millions of dollars of food ended up in the garbage anyway.
From milk to meats and fish, we didn't take any chances. We just took everything we had in our cases and got rid of it.
This New York restaurant spent the day restocking their kitchen. Now they're worried about staffing.
Mass transportation is not available, so employees can't get here.
Many workers who drive to their jobs were forced to stay home today. It takes electricity to pump gasoline. There were long lines today at stations where power had been restored.
Well, when I first opened up, we had no power, so it was pretty quiet. Then once the power came back, lines started forming. Okay. And it's been like this ever since.
The final toll of the blackout of '03 will depend on how quickly power is returned. Until that happens, the cost to the economy is being estimated at $30 billion a day. Betsy Stark, ABC News, New York.
Still ahead, anatomy of an outage. A closer look at how an aging electrical system left millions of people in the dark and then pulled from the darkness. Dramatic rescues after the power went down.
Only Oust air sanitizer kills odor-causing bacteria in the air.
I mostly sprayed Lysol in the air. I thought Lysol was an air sanitizer.
It's true, Lysol works on surfaces, but it's not meant for the air. Only Oust air sanitizer kills 99.9% of odor-causing bacteria in the air.
My daughter Carly is like a tomboy, and her clothes are stinky and gross. Little spray, right away. It smells great, just fresh.
Get odor-causing bacteria out with Oust air sanitizer. S.C. Johnson, a family company.
Oust gets rid of the odors, doesn't mask the odors.
By age 50, if you're just wishing for good health, good luck. Help improve your odds with Caltrate. The same Caltrate shown in a clinical study to help stop bone loss may also help reduce the risk of recurrent colon polyps. It's never too late for Caltrate.
To cure athlete's foot with 1 week's use, look for Lamisil AT. No matter which Lamisil AT you buy, you only have to treat for 1 week. All these Lotrimin AF products take 4 weeks use. Lamisil AT. There's no better way to cure athlete's foot.
Looking to put more miles in your tank? All Shell gasolines are now specially formulated to give you better mileage, helping to take you farther.
Know why I love lunchtime ragweed?
Enlighten me, Pollen.
By now, most allergy medicines people take early in the morning quit working.
Not hers. Her Allegra hasn't quit.
One dose of most allergy medicines doesn't work as long as you want, but just one Allegra 180 lasts up to 4 times longer than most OTC allergy medicines.
Her Allegra's still working.
For people 12 and over with seasonal allergies, side effects are low and may include headache, cold, or backache.
The all in Allegra must mean all day and all night.
Once daily Allegra, the relief goes on.
Everybody respects John Green.
As a realtor, John Green sells houses for a living. But as a scoutmaster, his barn is a second home to every member of Troop 137.
He just provides us with all the stuff that we need to advance through scouting.
His business ethics are just like his scout ethics to the highest caliber.
Boy Scouts have the scout oath, the realtors have their code of ethics. It's important to all of us.
I just thank him for everything he's given us.
For the best protection against water damage, one name says it all. Thompson's Water Seal, Wood Protector Plus Waterproofer for the highest level of water protection guaranteed. Thompson's Water Seal and New Advance, the most powerful protection against water damage.
Next week, you work out, but what are you doing for your brain? From staying competitive on the job to understanding your teenager, it's all in your brain. The special series on World News Tonight.
More than 24 hours after the blackout, power companies are still struggling to restore electricity and understand what happened. The nation's grid is divided into 3 parts, but it's an enormously complex network. Engineers sometimes describe it as having a life of its own. ABC's Ned Potter takes a closer look.
Even now, it is clear that that glitch near Cleveland was small. Too small, at least, to justify 50 million people losing power.
Despite being a superpower, we have a grid that is comparable to a third world country, and that's not right.
But that, say some energy analysts, is what happens when the demand for power keeps rising while the power grid to feed that demand keeps aging.
People, of course, don't want transmission lines building near their houses or near where they work. They don't want the power plants building near their houses or where they work. But we all want electricity.
1-800-359. Electricity to run all the computers, phone networks, lights, air conditioners that we didn't have before. Power demand has gone up more than 10% in 4 years. Most of the time, the system handles it. So how did we have such a massive breakdown yesterday? Because everything is interconnected, with high-tension lines carrying power from far-off generators to the places that need them. If there is one breakdown and the safety mechanisms fail to catch it, huge sections of the grid can cascade into darkness.
The critical infrastructure there that links the people that are using the electricity with the people that are making it has simply not kept up.
Some analysts say the problem has been a well-meant but botched effort at deregulation. Laws passed in the 1990s created incentive for companies to build more power plants, but not to build the wires and transformers to send that power where it's needed.
The result is that transmission lines have become more and more and more heavily loaded until the system has now got to the point where it's really beginning to creak.
It is no better in Europe, which has a vast patchwork of power grids like North America's. Poor countries, ironically, would not have a day like this. Blackouts are so common that most buildings have their own generators. But most American homes do not. Millions of people had a sleepless night last night, and maybe, says the president, that will send a wake-up call to the providers of the nation's power. Ned Potter, ABC News, New York.
And at Friday prayers in Baghdad, a Muslim cleric used the power failure in the U.S. as an opportunity to denounce electricity shortages in Iraq. We in Iraq, he said, have endured the condition not for hours, but months. When we return, emergency exit. Hundreds of people forced to escape from the darkness.
The South Texas